Welcome back to Morning Joe. Former Vice President Mike Pence has been a regular at conservative conferences for years.
It's been a
But
favorite.
an event on Friday, well, yeah, I mean, super conservative, right?
Yeah.
I would think. On Friday, though, at this event, things took a different turn for the former vice president. Pence was actually heckled while delivering a speech at the Faith and Freedom Coalition event in Florida.
And I want to thank my friend Ralph Reed for those overly generous words. I'm deeply humbled by them. And Ralph Reed knows me well enough to know the introduction I prefer is a little bit shorter. I'm a Christian, a conservative, and a Republican in that order, and I am honored to stand before you today.
So the woman you heard, or at least one of them, was shouting traitor and was escorted out. The former vice president ignored the outburst and continued with his speech. Joining us now, professor at the Lyndon B. Johnson School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas, MSNBC contributor Victoria DeFrancesco Soto, NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent and host of Way Too Early, Casey Hunt. And Donnie Deutsch is with us as well. He's the host of the podcast entitled On Brand with Donnie Deutsch, and it's really good. So, Joe, I just want to back up here and start with you in terms of what happened at this conservative event with Mike Pence. These people who are screaming at the former vice president, I think it is on the concept that he didn't stop the process, that he's a traitor. They're saying traitor because he didn't stop the process of democracy. And this again, and I'm not saying it, to be, whatever, to make waves here, but this is a cult. This is following a leader who is clearly trying to, build that following on lies. And they are following blindly.
Well, it is certainly not a political party that's aligned with conservative principles or values. It hasn't been that in a very long
correct.
time. And when you have Mike Pence now insufficiently loyal to great leader that he's called a traitor and booed and heckled, Mitt Romney, a guy who has spent his entire life fighting for the Republican Party, put himself and his family on the front lines, getting attacked in 2012, having a nasty ad saying that he was responsible for the death of workers. That was Mitt Romney, who now is insufficiently loyal to great leader, that he gets booed and heckled even in Utah. You have Cindy McCain, a woman who had to undergo great slander while her husband was running for president in the Republican Party. Now she's being sanctioned. Of course, Liz Cheney, someone who she and her family have literally devoted their entire lives to the conservative movement, to the conservative cause, to the Republican Party, to the grand old party. But it's not a grand old party. It's not a conservative party. It is a personality cult. And this is just the latest example, Casey Hunt, of one rock-ribbed conservative after another rock-ribbed conservative being booed and heckled because they didn't support the overturning of a democratic election.
It's pretty stunning, and I was just sitting here rereading the letter that the vice president wrote to Congress, and I remember the day that it came out, and I'm not sure any of us, we thought a lot of it at the time and that there were some nerves heading into January 6th, but we also read it and we thought, okay, this is what makes sense in the context of our democracy. And it has typically been a very conservative thing to do, or at least many conservatives have carried constitutions around in their pockets in recent years and talked about making sure that there's loyalty to that document. And that is what this entire letter is all about from the former vice president. And he, of course, had stood loyally by President Trump, then President Trump, for the 4 years, to the point that, he was on the receiving end of a lot of ridicule and mocking from people who opposed him. But he, at the end of the day, stood up and said, no, the country is more important than this one man. And that's the difference. I mean, these conferences, I can't even tell you how many of these types of conferences, conservative conferences I have attended over the years, my years of covering campaigns and Congress. And it used to be all of these guys would march across the stage to see who got the most cheers based on what they had to say, based on whether or not they lined up with the values that were being presented. And in this particular case, it's Ralph Reed, faith and freedom, freedom that is laid out in the Constitution. So this is just an incredible reversal and completely different. And I mean, look, these conferences were where we got the first kind of early sense that Donald Trump was going to turn into what he did. But we've now watched him govern for 4 years. We saw January 6th. We know how ultimately that ends. So I think there is this big question out there. Where do all those people, Joe, that you just named, where do they go? What are their futures? Because, I mean, some of them have demonstrated themselves to be extraordinarily courageous and worth including in our public life. But right now they don't have a home, because it's certainly not in the Republican Party that we saw on display at this event.
Joe, as you take it to the next guest, I just, I think about that moment between John McCain and that voter where he said no. And I know that Mitch McConnell and Mike Pence have certain little things that they've said on the record about January 6th. But these events are opportunities to say no and to make a choice and to choose conservative values over the cult of one man who promulgated and incited a riot on the Capitol. And I just, naive, whatever, too far left, whatever it is you want to say, I don't get it. I don't get why none of these Republicans who were in very, very high positions, who could really make an impact and bring back the Republican Party from Crazy Town, don't take the opportunity to just say no openly about what happened on January 6th. Repetitively, don't say they did, but at moments like this, in a way that is clear.
You say, Mika, that they can make a difference. That's a liberal's dream. That is a liberal's pipe dream. I keep hearing it. Oh, why doesn't Representative Smith just stand up and really tell it like it is? And that's going to... No, it's not going to change anything. It's not going to change, because we've been making the mistake in our little bubble of thinking that this was about politicians. No, this is not about politicians. This is about the rank and file of a Republican Party that once was conservative. Now it's all about one thing. It's about Donald Trump. And if Donald Trump says somebody is up, they're up. And if he says they're down, they're down. That is how the party defines itself right now. Don't think for a second that any Republican in Washington, D.C. can make a difference. At the end, the problem is not Mike Pence or with anybody else. The problem is with the rank and file. Of course, that rank and file is shrinking. It's getting smaller. I think moments like this actually make that rank and file even smaller. More people peel off of the Republican Party. They become independent. They start voting for conservative Democrats. I think we're going to see, we're going to see a major realignment in American politics over the next 5 years. The Democratic Party is going to get bigger. It's going to get more moderate. You're going to have a lot of people in the suburbs that started breaking in the 2020 election and the 2018 election continue to break that way as long as this madness ensues. Unless there's a Republican that can come along and say, hey, you gotta stop with the cult stuff. That's not helping us expand our party. We need to start worrying about winning elections again. Until that moment comes, and it may not come until after 2024, because the Republican House may do very well in 2022. They should. If they don't, it's a shock. But until that happens, this is going to continue, and it's going to cause long-term damage to the Republican Party. But Victoria, let's look again at the man who was called a traitor yesterday and who was heckled yesterday in this speech. A guy who's been going to these faith and freedom events his entire adult life, a guy who should be custom made for this. But Mike Pence is being called a traitor because he actually would not subvert the Constitution of the United States. And And, you know, to Mika's point, she says, well, if somebody will just speak up. Well, no. Well, guess what? Liz Cheney spoke up. She's persona non grata in the Republican Party. Mike Pence spoke up. His future in the Republican Party, pretty sketchy. Mitch McConnell on January the 6th spoke up. Donald Trump has declared him a traitor to the cause, a traitor to the party, a traitor to America. Speaking up, it's the right thing to do. Doesn't help you in the Republican Party, but I'm sorry, I got to push back to Mika. It's not going to change anything in this Republican Party because it's up to the Republican Party to change themselves from the ground up.